Lesson 7, Review. Hi everyone, welcome back to Lenny's Latin class. Today we're in Lesson 7, which is on page 23, and this is a review lesson. We're going to revisit some of the things we've already talked about in the past. So let's dive into section 77. The first review item here says, what is meant by base? And they refer us to section 22. What they're talking about here is the stem or base of a noun. And as I've mentioned several times, this involves the genitive singular form of the noun. Whenever you learn a new noun in Latin, you need to concern yourself with the nominative singular form and the genitive singular form. If you are a beginner at Latin, you might think to yourself that we make the different forms of a noun from the nominative singular form. And it makes sense if you think about it, but that's not the way it is. The way it really is that you make all the different forms of a noun in Latin by taking the genitive singular form and chopping off the ending. Once you've done that, you are left with a base, which is called the genitive stem. And the genitive stem is the thing that you can add all the endings to make all the other forms of the noun except the nominative singular. Sometimes there will be a slight stem change in the nominative singular, and we're going to talk about that in the future as we begin to see certain words that have that characteristic. We'll see a few of them in the second declension, and we'll see lots of them in the third declension. So moving on to number 2, how is the noun declined? Well, I just mentioned the nominative singular form is on its own. That's a form that, for some nouns, has a slightly different stem. But the way to make all 9 other forms is to take the genitive singular, chop off the ending, take the genitive stem, and then add all the endings to get the various forms. So that's how you decline a noun. And we'll talk more about this later. Number 3, how is the present tense conjugated? Well, for the first conjugation and second conjugation, what we do is we take the infinitive, remove the RE from the end, and then we add the personal endings. Of course, in the first person singular, we lose a vowel, and the ending for that is just the letter O. In the third conjugation, it doesn't work quite like that. Instead, we get the letter I before the personal ending. And in the third person plural, we get the letter U before the personal ending. In the fourth conjugation, we can take the infinitive and chop off the RE and use that as a stem for adding personal endings. In the first person singular, you keep the letter I before the letter O. So you get forms like audio, I hear. And in the third person plural, you get the letter I, then the letter U, then the personal ending, like audiunt. Moving on to number 4, inflect the model words in lessons 1 through 6. Okay, what the authors of the book want you to do is go back and look at the words you've learned and practice writing out paradigms for them. If it's a verb, practice writing out the 6 present tense forms. If it's a noun, practice writing out the declension. Number 5 is next. What use has been given for each of the cases? Okay, for the nominative case, we can use it as the subject of a sentence, or we can use it as a predicate. If I say, Masala is a sailor, then the word sailor in that sentence is what we call a predicate. It's not a direct object. A direct object would require a transitive verb, that is, a verb that engages in some kind of action, an action verb like hit, see, find. Those are action verbs. But if you're just saying that something is being something, that's not an action verb. That's just a verb of being. So if I say Masala is a sailor, I have a verb of being, and so the thing that you're saying Masala is not a direct object. It's a predicate, more specifically, a predicate nominative. So that's a crucial difference between a predicate and a direct object. Very important that you understand that. You can also have a predicate adjective. If I say masala is fabulous, then the word fabulous there is also a predicate. It's just a predicate adjective. So the nominative case can be a subject or a predicate. The genitive case we use to show possession. In English, we have a couple of ways to do that. We can use the word of. We can say the peak of the mountain, or we can use an apostrophe and the letter S. We can say the mountain's peak. Whether we say the peak of the mountain or the mountain's peak, either way, we're still showing that the peak belongs to the mountain. So that's showing possession. In Latin, to do that, you use the genitive case. The dative case is used to show the indirect object in a sentence. The indirect object is the party that is receiving or benefiting in a sentence. If you tell a story to someone, then the party you're telling the story to, in Latin, that would be in the dative case. If you're giving money to someone, the party that you're giving the money to, in a Latin sentence, would be in the dative case, and so on and so forth. The accusative case is used as a direct object. If you have a transitive verb, that is a verb that can exercise some kind of action on something else, then the target of that action is the direct object. And in a Latin sentence, that needs to be in the accusative case. Also, the accusative case can be used with some prepositions. For instance, prepositions that show motion toward require the accusative case. For instance, the preposition ad, which means to or toward or at, requires the accusative. So if I want to say to the gate, I would not say ad porta, I would say ad portam with the am ending. And finally, the ablative case. There are many, many ways to use the ablative case in Latin. So far, you know two of them, one of which is the ablative of means. If I say, I kicked the ball with my foot, then the idea of with my foot, in Latin, you can express that with the ablative case. It's showing the object or the thing or the tool you used to accomplish an action. We call that ablative of means or ablative of instrument. Another way to use the ablative case is with certain prepositions. Prepositions that show motion away from typically require the ablative case. For example, the preposition ab. So if I say from the gate, I would say a porta with a macron over the a. And in the future, you'll learn lots more ways to use the ablative case. Moving on to number 6, I already mentioned what an indirect object is. It's the beneficiary or recipient in a sentence, the party that receives or benefits. Let's turn the page and move on to section 78. We have lots of vocabulary to review. I will let you do that on your own. Below the vocabulary list, they talk about related English words. We don't need to talk about that because I've been covering that from the very beginning. Every chance I get, I tell you related English words that are somehow related to the Latin words we're studying. Okay, let's move on now to section 79. These are review sentences. That means sentences that we've already seen in previous exercises. So let's not write these out. Let's just do them together. Number 1 says, Gallia est divisa. Gallia means Gaul. That's the name of a place. The area that the ancient Romans called Gaul today is called France. Est is a verb that means is, and divisa means divided. So Gallia is divided. Notice that Gallia is the subject, and the word divisa is the predicate, a predicate adjective. And since the word divisa is describing Gallia, it must match Gallia in case, number, and gender. Okay, that's what we call agreement. In Latin, if you have an adjective modifying a noun, the adjective has to match the noun in case. In other words, if the case of the noun is genitive, the adjective has to be genitive too. If the Noun is plural, the adjective has to be plural too. If the noun is neuter, the adjective has to be neuter too. Okay, so the adjective has to match the noun in case, number, and gender. Again, that's called agreement. And we see an example of that here. Duisa and Gallia agree with each other in case, number, and gender. That's a very important concept to know as a student of Latin. Moving on to number 2, Celtae amicitiam confirmant. Okay, the subject is Celtae, confirmant is the verb. That's third person plural. It's a form of the verb confirmo, which means to affirm or strengthen. Amicitia means friendship. Here it's in the accusative singular because it's the direct object. Okay, so the Celts are affirming the friendship. That's what number 2 says. Number 3, terra Celtarum a Belgis ad Aquitaniam pertinet. Okay, terra is the subject. The verb is pertinet. Terra means land or country. Pertinet is a form of the verb pertineo, which means to extend. This is third person singular. So what we have so far would say the land extends, or the country extends. The word Celtarum is genitive plural. That's possessing terra. So we'll read terra Celtarum as the land of the Celts, or the country of the Celts. We have 2 prepositional phrases, a Belgis. A means from. Remember that prepositions that describe motion away from take the ablative case. So therefore, Belgis is ablative plural. So a Belgis says from the Belgians. Next we have ad Aquitaniam. Ad means to. The preposition to shows motion toward. In Latin, the case that is associated with motion toward is the accusative case. So notice that ad here is taking the accusative case. Aquitaniam is accusative. Okay, that's a good example of the different uses of the cases here. So number 3 says, the land of the Celts extends from the Belgians to Aquitania. Number 4 is next. Aquitani et Belgae et Celtae Galliam incolunt. Okay, we have the Aquitani, that's a group of people, the Belgae, another group of people, and the Celtae, the Celts. 3 groups of people. They're all doing the action described by incolunt. They're all inhabiting something. Okay, incolo means to inhabit or to dwell. Incolo is a third conjugation verb. We're going to get a U before the personal ending in the third person plural. And the direct object here, the thing they're inhabiting, is Gaul. So notice that since Galliam is the direct object, it's in the accusative case. Accusative singular to be exact. So number 4 says the Aquitani and the Belgians and the Celts are inhabiting Gaul. Number 5 is next. Belgae cum Germanis contindunt. The subject is Belgae, that's Belgians. Contindunt is a form of the verb contendo, which can mean strive, fight, or hasten. Here it's third person plural. We'll translate it here as fight. Cum Germanis means with the Germans. The preposition cum requires the ablative. So Germanis is ablative plural. So number 5 says the Belgians are fighting with the Germans. Number 6 is next. Germani trans Rhenum incolunt. The subject here is Germani. That means Germans. Incolunt. We've already seen the verb incolunt. That's the verb incolo in the third person plural. So the Germans live, or the Germans dwell, trans Rhenum. Trans means across. Rhenum means the Rhine River. Notice that Rhenum is accusative because the preposition trans requires the accusative case. It takes the accusative. So number 6 says the Germans live across the Rhine or the Germans dwell across the Rhine. Number 7 is next. Galos ab Aquitanis garumna, abelgis matrona et sequana dividit. Okay, in this one we have interesting word order. The subject of the sentence is not the first word in the sentence. So as you begin to read this sentence and you look at the word galos, what should come to mind is that galos is accusative plural, therefore it cannot possibly be the subject of this sentence. For the subject, you need a noun in the nominative case. Galos is accusative, so you know that galos can't be the subject. Ab Aquitanis is a prepositional phrase. It means from the Aquitani. That's the people who live in Aquitania. A Belgis means from the Belgians. So we have two prepositional phrases. The verb here is dividit. That means he, she, or it divides. It's third person singular. So we do have three words here that can be the subject. These words are nominative. That's garumna, which is the Garonne River, Matrona, which is the Marne River, and Sequana, which is the Seine River. So the idea here is these rivers are dividing one thing from another thing, okay? We're actually going to use the word galos twice. The word galos is going to be referenced 2 times here. So let's see how this plays out. The subject here is garumna. The direct object is galos, okay? So the garumna, and now we have our verb dividit. The garumna divides the Gauls, okay? Garumna is the subject, dividit is the verb, galos is the direct object. So the Garumna River, the Garonne River, divides the Gauls. And then we have ab Aquitanis. So it says the Garonne River divides the Gauls from the Aquitani, the people living in Aquitania. Now we have 2 more subjects, Matrona and Sequana, the Marne River and the Seine River. They are also doing some dividing here. They're dividing things up. They're going to reuse the verb dividit. Even though there's 2 of them, it's still going to have a singular verb. So the Matrona and Sequana divide, and now we're going to reuse the word galos. They divide the Gauls, and then we have a Belgis. So altogether, this sentence will say, the Garonne River divides the Gauls from the Aquitani. The Marne River and the Seine River divide the Gauls from the Belgians. Okay, the thing to notice here is the economy of the Latin language. In a Latin sentence, you can have words that get reused like that. You can have words that get stated one time, but they carry through the sentence. The meaning of them carries through and can be referenced more than once. Okay, so Garumna uses the verb dividit. Matrona and Sequana, they also use the verb dividit. So you have 2 sets of subjects here using the same verb. That's a very economical use. Instead of repeating the verb, you just have 2 separate subjects referencing it. Same thing with galos. Instead of repeating the word galos, you just reference it twice. So again, that's the economical nature of the way words can be used in a Latin sentence. Number 8 is next. Helvetia in quatuor pagos est divisa. Let's look at this prepositional phrase here, in quatuor pagos. I've mentioned that the preposition in is a 2-way preposition. It can take the accusative case or the ablative case. When it takes the accusative, it can mean things like into. When it takes the ablative, it can mean in or on. Here it's taking the accusative. Pagos is the noun pagos, which means district or canton, and it's got the os ending, that's accusative plural. The word quatuor here means the number 4, okay? And I've said before that when an adjective modifies a noun, it has to match in case, number, and gender. So you might be asking yourself, why doesn't it say in quatuoros pagos? Why not add os to the word quatuor? Well, the answer is that many numbers are indeclinable. Indeclinable means that a noun always stays the same and it doesn't take the normal endings you would expect from the paradigm or set of noun endings found in a declension. So most numbers are indeclinable. And what we have here is the number 4, quatuor, and it's indeclinable. So it's just going to say quatuor even though it's agreeing with pagos. So in quatuor pagos, we'll say into 4 districts or into 4 cantons. Okay, the subject is Helvetia, the verb is est, and divisa means divided. So number 8 will say Helvetia is divided into 4 districts. Number 9, Helvetii opida incendunt. The subject here is Helvetii. That's the folks that live in Helvetia. Today that's Switzerland. The verb is incendunt. That's a form of the verb incendo, which means to set fire to or burn. It's third person plural. And the direct object is opida. That's the noun opidum, which is a neuter noun of the second declension. Quick review of neuter nouns. 2 things to remember about neuter nouns is that in the nominative plural, the ending will always be the letter A for all neuter nouns, no matter what declension they're in. So 1 opidum, but 2 opida. Okay, very important concept. The other thing to remember is that neuter nouns have the same forms for nominative and accusative. So if in the nominative you have opidum and opida, the accusative will be the same, opidum and opida. So that's what we have here. Opida is accusative plural. It's the direct object, and it means towns. So number 9 says, the Helvetii are burning their towns, or the Helvetii are setting fire to their towns. We can throw in the word their, T-H-E-I-R, because in the Latin sentence, that kind of meaning is implied. So when you're translating from Latin to English, you can throw in a word like his or her or their. So the Helvetii are burning their towns. Number 10 is next. Helvetii proiliis cum Germanis contendunt. The subject is Helvetii. The verb is contendunt. That's the verb contendo. It means to strive, fight, or hasten. Cum Germanis means with the Germans. Proiliis is a form of the noun proilium, which means battle. It's ablative plural. We can translate it as an ablative of means. We can say the Helvetii are fighting with the Germans. We could say with battles or by battles. Number 11 is next. Belgae cum Germanis continenter bellum gerunt. Okay, our verb here is the verb gero, G-E-R-O, which means to bear or carry. Typically, when you see it with the word bellum, it makes an idiom, to wage war. So here we'll translate gerunt as wage. It's third person plural, so they bear or they carry bellum. Bellum is the direct object. They bear war. Again, we'll translate it as they are waging war or they wage war. The subject is Belgae. Cum Germanis means with the Germans. And we have an adverb here, continenter, which means continually. So number 11 says, the Belgians continually are waging war with the Germans. Okay, let's move on now to section 80. Here we have some new exercises. Why don't you turn off the recording and do these on your own? Translate them, write them out as if it's a homework assignment. And when you're finished, turn the recording back on and we'll go over them together. Okay, hopefully by now you've finished your homework. Let's dive into section 80 and go over these exercises together. Number 1 says, nautas moneo. Nautas is in the accusative plural. That's a form of the word nauta, which means sailor. And the verb is moneo. Moneo means to warn, right? And it's first person singular. So I am the one doing the action. Moneo says, I warn, or I am warning. And nautas, again, is the accusative plural direct object. So number 1 says, I am warning the sailors. Number 2, amicis persuademus. The verb here is persuademus. That's a form of the verb persuadeo, which means to persuade. Remember that persuadeo takes the dative case. And that's what we have here with amicis. Notice the is ending on the word amicis. That's a form of the noun amicus, which means friend. Persuademus is first person plural, so that's we doing the action. We are persuading the friends. Again, we can throw in a word like our, because that's implied by the Latin. We can say, we are persuading our friends. Again, the word our is not actually in the Latin, but it's implied, so you'll see that very commonly. Remember also that persuadeo takes the dative, because the way this verb works, it's as if you're being persuasive to someone, or you're giving a persuasive reason to someone. So the friends here are the ones receiving the persuasion, or they're benefiting from the persuasive reason that you're giving to them. Okay, so that's why persuadeo takes the dative. That's the thinking that goes along with that. So number 2 says, we are persuading our friends. Number 3 is next, tubas auditis. The verb here is auditis. That's a form of the verb audio, which means hear. And it's second person plural. That means y'all hear. Audio is a fourth conjugation verb. Tubas is a form of the noun tuba, which means trumpet, an ancient Roman brass instrument of some kind. Notice that it's accusative plural because it's the direct object. So number 3 says, y'all hear the trumpets. Number 4 is next. Via per oppidum est longa. Via is the subject. It means road or way. We'll just translate it here as road. The verb is est. That means is. Longa means long. So far we have the road is long. And then per oppidum is a prepositional phrase. It means through the town. Per means through, and it requires the accusative case. Oppidum is accusative singular. So number 4 says, the road through the town is long. Number 5 is next. Rhodanus provinciam nostram ab Helvetiis dividit. Okay, the subject here is Rhodanus. That's the Rhone River. The verb is dividit. That's third person singular, and it means he, she, or it divides. So the Rhone River divides. The direct object here is provinciam. That means province. Nostrum is an adjective that means our, O-U-R. So provinciam nostrum says our province. Notice that nostrum agrees with provinciam in case, number, and gender. Provinciam is accusative singular. Therefore, nostrum also has to have an accusative singular ending. Ab Helvetiis says from the Helvetii. So number 5 says, the Rhone River divides our province from the Helvetii. Number 6 is next. Galli oppida inter Rhenum et Rhodanum habent. The subject here is Galli, that means Gauls. Habent is the verb. That's a form of habeo, a second conjugation verb, which means have. Habent is third person plural because it's agreeing with Galli. So the Gauls have. The direct object here is oppida. Oppida is accusative plural. So the Gauls have towns. Finally, a prepositional phrase, inter Rhenum et Rhodanum. Inter means between, and it requires the accusative case. Rhenum means the Rhine River. Rhodanum means the Rhone River. So inter Rhenum et Rhodanum says between the Rhine and the Rhone. So number 6 says the Gauls have towns between the Rhine and the Rhone. An important note about the Rhine River: throughout history, the Rhine River has been viewed as the natural border between France and Germany. So if you're on the east side of the Rhine, that's considered German territory. If you're on the west side of the Rhine, you're in Gaul. That's a very important border to keep in mind, especially in the context of Caesar's Gallic Wars. Number 8 is next. Nuntius litteras ab provincia ad Aquitaniam portat. Okay, nuntius is the subject here. It means messenger. Portat is the verb. That's the verb porto, which means carry. Here it's third person singular. So nuntius and portat together say the messenger is carrying. What's he carrying? Litteras. Litteras is accusative plural because it's the direct object. As I've mentioned before, the noun littera means letter. It can mean letter of the alphabet, or if it's plural, it means the kind of letter you send someone. But you translate it in a singular way. So when it says nuntius portat litteras, that means he's carrying one letter. So the messenger is carrying a letter. And then we have a couple of prepositional phrases. Ab provincia means from the province. Ad Aquitaniam says to Aquitania. Again, notice ab is taking the ablative. Ad is taking the accusative. So number 8 says, the messenger is carrying a letter from the province to Aquitania. Number 9 is next. Copiae gladiis et pilis prope silvam contendunt. Okay, the subject is copiae. When this noun is plural, it can mean troops or forces. The verb here is contendunt. The verb contendo means strive, fight, or hasten. Here we can translate it as fight, or we could translate it as strive. Strive means roughly the same thing. So the troops or forces are fighting, and then we have two ablatives of means. Gladiis is ablative plural. The word gladius means sword, so we can translate gladiis as by means of swords or with swords. And pilis is also ablative plural. That's the ablative plural form of pilum, which means javelin. So what we have so far would say the troops are fighting with swords and with javelins. Prope silvam is a prepositional phrase. Prope means near. It takes the accusative, and silvam is the accusative singular form of silva, which means forest. So prope silvam says near the forest. So number 9 will say the troops are fighting with swords and with javelins near the forest. Number 10 is next. Legatus copias munire castra iubet. Here we see an infinitive, munire. That's from the verb munio, which means to fortify. It's a fourth conjugation verb. The four principal parts are munio, munire, munivi, munitum. Our English word munitions is related to this word. So the second principal part out of the four principal parts is what we call the infinitive. And that's what we have here. Munire is the infinitive. It means to fortify. Okay, the subject here is legatus. That means a high-ranking general, like a lieutenant general. We'll just say lieutenant here. And the verb is iubet. That's a form of the verb eubeo, which means to command or order. So the subject and verb would say the lieutenant is commanding, or the lieutenant is ordering. Who is he ordering? The copias. This is the Latin noun copia, which can mean supply in the singular. When it's plural, it can mean troops or forces. And that's what we have here. So the lieutenant is commanding the troops, and then we have the infinitive munire. So the lieutenant is commanding the troops to fortify, and the infinitive munire is going to take its own direct object, castra. Remember, castra means camp. Grammatically, it's plural, but we translate it as the singular word camp. So number 10 says, the lieutenant is ordering the troops to fortify the camp. Number 11 is next. Videmus signa gallorum, qui in castra veniunt. Okay, let's handle the first part of the sentence first. Videmus signa gallorum. Videmus is a form of the verb video, which means see. Here it's first person plural. That means we are doing the action. So videmus means we see, and signa means signs or signals. It can also mean a standard, like a special symbol that you carry into battle. It's like a stick that sticks up, and it can have an eagle mounted on top. It can have various other decorations on it. I think that's what they're talking about here, is this battle standard, this special symbol you carry into battle. And in the Roman army, the person who carried it was called the signifer. That root there, F-E-R, means to bear or carry. So signifer is a person who carries the signum. Okay? So signum is the noun here. It's neuter. So the plural form will be signa. Remember that for any neuter noun, the nominative plural is going to end with the letter A. So one signum, two signa. Okay, so videmus and signa together says, we see the standards. Gallorum is genitive plural. It means of the Gauls. It's possessing signa. So we see the standards of the Gauls. Now the authors of the book are throwing a little something extra at us here, something we haven't really studied yet. The word qui is a relative pronoun. It means who. We'll talk more about relative pronouns later. So for now, just translate qui as who. And then we have another verb, veniunt. That's the verb venio, which means come. It's third person plural. So veniunt means they come, or they are coming. In castra means into the camp. Notice that in is taking the accusative. So here's how this sentence will read. We see the standards of the Gauls who are coming into the camp. Again, the word qui here is a relative pronoun. We're going to study that much more in the future. For now, though, let's move on to number 12. Gladii, quos Romani habent, sunt parvi. Okay, here they're throwing yet another relative pronoun at us. Gladii is the subject. That's the nominative plural form of the noun gladius, which means sword. And the verb here is sunt, which means they are. So gladii and sunt together will say the swords are. Parvi is a predicate adjective, which means small. So gladii, sunt, and parvi together say the swords are small. Notice that the adjective parvi agrees with gladii in case, number, and gender. Gladii is nominative plural. Parvi is nominative plural. Okay, now we have the relative pronoun quos. You can see the authors of the book want us to translate that as which. It's a relative pronoun. Again, we'll talk about this more in the future. And we have a little mini sentence here. Quos Romani habent. When you have a little miniature sentence there that starts with a relative pronoun, that's called a relative clause. Again, we're going to talk lots more about relative clauses in the future. But within this little miniature sentence, we have Romani, that means Romans, and habent is a form of the verb habeo, which means have. And it's third person plural. So we'll translate quos Romani habent as which the Romans have. Generally, the purpose of a relative clause is to tell you more information about some word. And that's what this relative clause is doing. It's telling us more about the swords, the gladiii. A relative clause is just an extra thing you can add into a sentence. The sentence will function just fine without it. It's what you call a dependent clause. The main clause here is gladiii sunt and parvi. The swords are small. But then this relative clause here tells us a bit more. It says the swords which the Romans have are small. Okay, so that's how a relative clause works. It tells you a little more information about something, but it can't stand on its own. If you just say which the Romans have by itself, that makes no sense. A relative clause only makes sense when it's embedded in a larger sentence. Okay, so number 12 says, the swords which the Romans have are small. Okay, that's it for this lesson. I hope this was a good review for you. Remember to keep practicing each day speaking Latin. Say things in the Latin language. Make up sentences. Modify existing sentences. Look at the Latin composition exercises and let that give you ideas for things you can say. Look at the vocabulary lists and make up sentences with the words you see there. Just take time each day to make up sentences and say them out loud while you close your eyes and imagine the scene in your mind, okay? The idea is to get the Latin words into your mind and to get you using them to express things. This will give you a stronger sense of familiarity with the language, and it will make you progress much faster. Okay, thank you for listening. That wraps up this lesson, and we'll see you again next time in Lesson 8.